The Israeli Transportation Ministry has just begun providing a separate bus line for Palestinians in the West Bank who travel to Israel for work. This news comes a week after President Obama helped unveil the Rosa Parks statue in Congress, and shortly before he's to make his first trip to Israel since his 2008 campaign. Israeli officials say the separate line was meant to make Palestinians travel more comfortable, but the symbolism of separate bus lines, even if they are optional, have led Palestinian, Israeli, and U.S. commentators to draw connections between American segregation and Israel's occupation of the West Bank.
We tried to ride an Israeli bus, a bus that travels between settlements and goes into East Jerusalem, which is, Palestinian annexed territory. And when we stood at the bus stop, first of all, we were cursed at and we were basically abused in different ways by Israeli settlers. And no bus, about 5 buses passed by and none of them stopped to allow us on. Eventually, one bus stopped about 50 yards away from us to allow the Israeli settlers onto it. And we ran and climbed into the bus and sat down, and we took, we did everything we did was nonviolent because we were inspired by the Freedom Riders in the U.S., by Rosa Parks. And consequently, what happened after that is that the Israeli military surrounded the bus and it drove to a nearby checkpoint. They emptied it of all the passengers except the Freedom Riders. They waited until it was dark so no cameras would be able to take footage, and then they arrested all of us. And they did so in a very violent manner. The message we wanted to get to the world through this act was that the bus companies that are running these buses, whether it's the Veolia bus company and others, are multinational companies. They operate in the US, they operate in Europe, they operate around the world. And if people around the world came together and said, we're not going to give contracts to these bus companies until they stop participating in the system of colonial apartheid and occupation that exists in the West Bank and in the occupied territories generally, they come together and they boycott them, that will begin to cause the system to crumble. A lot of people have, I think, especially in the US, a lot of people have the comfort to decide for themselves whether they believe that bigotry exists or whether they believe it's ingrained in society. I live that bigotry on a day-to-day basis. Whenever I travel, whenever I go between cities, I don't have water in my house 4 days a week because of that bigotry, and it exists. There's an institutional regime built to maintain it. I, welcome anyone from the US. I welcome you, the people on the show, to come visit me, and I'll show it to you. It exists, and the only way to put an end to it is to end the incentivized system that is put in place to allow people to profit from it.